Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Avery. I'm joined today by my sort of like arm waving
Yeah,
co-host.
I was just bringing a big energy to
It's
this
more
one.
of like an SOS. It's like it's
Help,
like
God, God help! I was like, I'm straight on an island.
Well, you know what we're gonna do today, Tucker? We're gonna help people think through the idea of the relationship between video games and skill. You gave me a segue that I didn't even have.
Yeah.
So that's good because I was just gonna bumble my way through it as I still ended up doing.
Yes.
But Tucker, we had an interesting conversation a couple weeks back as we were hanging out playing some games, just about how you and I value skill differently.
Yes.
I play a lot of games. Most of the games I play, frankly, almost all of them, are predicated on skill. They're predicated on cultivating skill, on skill being tested, on me feeling a sort of internal desire to improve my skill.
Sure.
And you
don't.
There
we go. No, but that's definitely true. It is so fascinating for me to sort of try to push myself outside of my own internal thoughts on when I'm playing a game. Like, what do I like? What makes me feel good? What really sucks me into the world of gaming?
Sure.
What elements of game design push me away from a game? And you and I have had some pretty significantly different experiences with games in the last couple of months, even ones we were playing literally together, because of the difference in what we value in game design. And we've talked a few times about game design on this channel, but this time we want to really hone in on, with some submissions from our community, on what do you value in terms of skill and games. That can be difficulty, that can be different genres of games that require different kinds of skills. And where does that value lie? And we get to yin yang and bring opposite sides of the coin here, and bring in our community members.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I'm particularly excited to have this conversation is because we've always had a disagreement about what we look for out of a game.
About everything.
Even a disagreement as to whether or not we should wear pants for these videos. And we're not going to say
who's which.
But we both you and I and the royal we often talk about this dichotomy between gameplay and story.
Yeah.
But I don't really think that that's accurate. It's never really sat right with me because I ultimately feel like a game like Immortality that we both love, its gameplay is story.
Yeah.
There's very little like mechanical action there. But when you're looking at a game like Last of Us, you know, gameplay and story, those aren't really the right terms when you're talking about a game like that.
And
or
so
any game at all,
the dichotomy that we're going to be breaking down today is, I guess, it's difficulty or it's skill.
I think what it is, and the way I'd put it is do you like games that are predicated upon skill or upon something else?
Sure.
Typically story.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, because I think what I was trying to sort of inelegantly explain is that I feel like story and gameplay are very closely linked.
Sure.
But I don't feel like skill and in story are that closely linked.
No, I definitely. But it's skill and gameplay, I think, are really what we'll be focusing on today. And we're not really going to be touching, I think, too much on story-based in games, because we're centering ourselves more specifically in the spectrum of skill in game design, from games that are purely based on technical skill, not without very little story or without anything else other than honing your craft at being good at the game, something like a fighting game, to where I think my side of the coin more often flips and then lands, is on games that do not require technical skill to progress, to enjoy them to their fullest extent.
I think that's a much better way to put it than I put it.
Yeah.
Let's start.
This is our dynamic. Yes. You bumble your way through something. I come in, sweep up the mess, smooth things over.
Exactly. And we're going to start here our discussion with a comment from my friend, your real life family member, Henry, who's finally going to get me to say this fucking Discord name out loud. Henry Sugma.
Yeah.
What's Sugma? Let us know in the comments, Henry. Henry says the following. To my prompt, which was as simple to our community as, to you, what role should skill play in game design? Do you prioritize playing games with skills as the main focus? This is what Henry said. And that's what everybody we're going to talk about here is responding to.
Correct.
Reward my skill with more stimuli to please my dopamine receptors, and I'll keep giving you money. It's that simple. My favorite games to play are action twitch games that require well-practiced hand-eye coordination to beat. Shmups, action games, platformer, that sort of thing. Yeah, and then he asked a question. We can get back to that later, but let's focus on this idea, because I think that actually I'm pretty much exactly aligned with him.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, when I look at my top 5 games, you're looking at Star Fox 64, you're looking at Mario Kart Deluxe, you're looking at Tetris Effect Connected, you're looking at Star Wars Battlefront 2, the original, and then Halo Reach. Those are all skill-based games.
Sure.
And Halo Reach is the only one there that has a real significant narrative to it.
Yeah. And also within that game can be approached in multiple ways depending on what difficulty you choose.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that actually Henry sums up my position very very nicely. But maybe we go to Bro's comment.
Sure. Okay. I'm sure he's going to be on a similar page. To be honest.
Here, you read Bro's. We'll go back and forth here.
Brogan Chatton says, skill is something developed, so I think the big essential role is a way to give the player tools to understand and improve at your game. Games that immediately push your shit in certainly have a place, but what's more important than any ceiling is a path for the player to appreciate their game on their terms. I don't prioritize it because secretly I'm not great at games. I like old school classic games that may be a bit unforgiving, and I like action games that may require fast responses.
This is an interesting idea. What do you think of this concept? I really like this idea of the importance being for the player to appreciate a game on their terms.
Absolutely. And I think that is why I do not value games that are specifically designed for skill and only skill.
Yeah.
A game like Ikaruga is ostensibly or Radiant Silvergun more specifically is essentially impossible to get further into unless you improve your skill at the game,
Right.
and because that is the only way into the game, I find it very alienating for someone who doesn't have the interest in replaying, in improving my reaction time to progress forward. And so the games that I value are the ones that certainly can have an option to be very skilled in them. A game like Super Mario Odyssey speedrunning is insane. You're doing frame perfect tricks. You're exploiting things in the game code. You're communicating with other community members. That has a high skill ceiling.
Yeah.
But it also has a very low skill floor. And I think that those are the games where there's a range that I end up appreciating the most, because it allows me to not feel like I need to necessarily meet the game on its own terms. I guess I do value a game that allows me to approach it in the way that I would like it to, would like to myself. And that means I get really into it and end up challenging myself by going for extra trophies or facing a boss again, or exploring extra areas and completing harder platforming puzzles, whatever it is. I want the game to accept me in, not force me to play it in a specific way, and then allow me to develop my own skill alongside it, to where if I do feel like I am technically proficient enough, it is inviting enough for me to want to challenge myself. I think the games that I steer away from, as I was saying, with something like Radiant Silvergun, are the ones where there is no invitation. It's take it or leave it, and that feels like I'm not even in the door at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point. I really like to talk about Super Mario Odyssey as an example of really, 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 really good game design a lot, because I think that it is one of the games that, better than almost anything across the medium of games, has a really approachable skill floor and a really, really high skill ceiling. Yeah. And no matter where you are sort of along that altitude, I guess.
Axis.
Along that y-axis, you're going to have a great time. And it really is up to you to, climb as high as you want. And no matter where you stop, you're going to have fun.
Yep.
And I think that that's an important idea too.
Sure.
When I think about a game like Radiant Silvergun, I don't actually agree that it's one that doesn't invite you in.
Sure.
Because that game very flexibly lets you knock the difficulty down to very easy. Earn more continues.
Well, yes, but also very easy was even really hard for you. And so even that skill floor is very, very high for your average game.
That's a fair point, but I still think that it very openly allows you to tailor the game to where you need it to be. And even if you're really bad at the start like I am, you're earning more continues, so you are being helped by the game to some degree. I think games that really don't do that at all are a lot of what From does, particularly Sekiro, where there's no leveling system and there's no real padding. Either you're good enough to beat the first boss who's a skill check, or you're not. And I'm not. And that does turn me off. Even as much as I do appreciate playing games for cultivating skill, something like Sekiro is simply too hard for me. And there's no real recourse for me to improve. Whereas I think a game like Radiant Silvergun does let me. And even if you just beat Radiant Silvergun on very easy and be done with it, like Super Mario Odyssey, I think you can be happy staying there. if I play Sekiro until I can't play it anymore, I am not happy with where I end because there's no sense of accomplishment there. Okay. And Radiant Silvergun has a great sense of accomplishment once you hit very easy.
Sure.
If I get stonewalled by Sekiro, and of course some of this comes down to the fact that I'm better at a game like Radiant Silvergun than I am at Sekiro.
Yeah.
But I think if a game allows you like an easy exit ramp to where you can feel good about your time spent with it, that's very important too. It's not just about the floor; it's about where you end.
Well, that I think that synergizes completely with what you were just saying. Is also a big part of your approachability of skill of a game is if a genre appeals to you or not.
Yeah.
Because a game like Radiant Silvergun that is 2D, is a shmup, is in this very specific, relatively, especially nowadays, niche genre, as opposed to 3D action games, which is something that I think is more widely understood by the general populace nowadays. Those two things, it depends on which genre appeals to you more, where you will feel that the game is giving ramp, whatever fucking thing about a ramp you just said.
Sure.
You all heard it, you know what I'm fucking referencing.
Sure.
Because I land on the opposite side of the coin to where, because the 3D action games appeal to me more, being able to dodge, being able to back away, feeling like there's a little bit of space to work with, that means that if I fail in a game like a Souls game, and we're definitely going to talk about those because I like those a lot more than you do, I feel that the game is giving me a little bit more obvious progress and allowing me to let my skill be flexible, as opposed to, and I think where I disagree on the difference between something like Sekiro and Radiant Silvergun, is that Radiant Silvergun is literally one pattern. Or, there's some things that flex back and forth, but it's the same area over and over again. It's the same patterns. It's literally just about where are you dodging the right bullets at the right time that you didn't know were coming at you. As opposed to a Souls game where it's about knowing the enemy's attack patterns and things like that, that you can move around and be in a different space and approach it from a different angle, which isn't possible.
Here's my question for you, though. What's the difference in your mind between the pattern of a shmup or the pattern of a boss in Sekiro?
I think there are just more ways to approach a 3D game than a 2D game. Sure. It's in a shmup, it's where are you on that y-axis?
Then how about like Hollow Knight?
I didn't really like Hollow Knight.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, because the reason I just am hammering home on the difference between these two games and why I disagree is because Sekiro literally does not do anything to help you. There's
no, I agree on that point.
Yeah.
And Sekiro is not a good example. I have not played Sekiro.
Right.
I have no idea if I'd like Sekiro or not. But if I was going to say Dark Souls has the fucking ghoul guy at the beginning that you have to beat, it's a similar idea. But the other Souls games do have. Elden Ring has that. Bloodborne has a way for you to collect souls to level up your character to get a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's why
so probably better to compare those two rather than Sekiro, because I haven't played the game. I have no fucking idea.
That's why I make a distinction with a game like Sekiro, because there are no tools, because From has decided that you either get good enough to beat the game or you don't, which is fine. I don't have any aversion of that. I just means I just won't beat the game.
We'll see if some aversion to it. You're not gonna play it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't have like a fundamental issue with that being their design.
Design, of course. No, I'm
but
just
the reason I like Elden Ring a lot more is because it has what you're suggesting,
more flexibility,
which is more flexibility, and it's not necessarily in the same way that Treasure lets you lower the difficulty rate in Silvergun, but it's that you have the tools to go someplace else, get better equipment, better gear, whatever. But let's go to another comment here.
Sure.
How about?
Well, do we want to go back to anything that Henry said, because we kind of skimmed past him? Was there anything in there?
Well, it was largely just that Henry and I have the same opinion.
Yeah, which is always a good thing.
Which I appreciate. But it does actually, one thing I do want to note that Henry did make me think about is this idea of action-oriented games not being the only type of skill-based games that exist.
Yeah.
Puzzling, the ability to do puzzles is a big element of skill that I do not possess at all. I do not like puzzle games. Yeah. I tried playing Professor Layton. I couldn't figure out any of the puzzles.
Yeah.
And for me, and you're totally right. It goes back to this idea that you must have an interest in improving a particular skill set to get any value out of a game like that.
Yes. And I want to hone in on this, because this is what I think I bring most distinctly to this conversation, is a different concept of what skill is for video games.
Sure.
The traditional understanding of skill is twitch reflexing, is frame perfect inputs, is learning combos in a fighting game, or memorizing attack patterns in an arcade game or something like that. That is what is traditionally understood to be skill, and that is the kind of skill design and game design that I have no interest in getting into because I feel very little progression internally to I want to be better at doing this so that I can beat it.
Yeah.
For me, skill is in other areas of game design that more appeal to me are in something like puzzle solving, which I think is more intuitive. You are building up a level of skill of understanding the rules of a game rather than your actual reflexes that I think is a pretty big difference. You can take as long as you goddamn want on a Professor Layton puzzle or with many puzzle games. You can take as long as you want, try different things, as opposed to it being literally just about is your brain and hand-eye coordination fast enough. And then so puzzle, this is one thing that you were just talking about.
Let's stick on that for a second.
Okay, sure.
Because I think what you're saying is interesting and I agree to a point.
Sure.
But I don't necessarily think that playing a game like, let's say, Halo Combat Evolved on a higher difficulty is just about your reflexes.
Sure.
Because I don't think it is. Yeah. I really like what you said about this idea of, for you, puzzle games are exciting because they let you learn a game's rules and build on those rules.
Except for Baba Is You. That game fucking makes me upset.
I could never play that game, so...
I also don't know how to code, so that would probably help.
I've been told by like right-wing weirdos in my Twitter comments recently that I should learn how to code, but that's a different conversation. When I'm playing Halo Combat Evolved, I'm doing the same thing.
Sure.
Being good at Halo Combat Evolved is not just necessarily being able to move well.
Sure.
That's in aim acutely. That's obviously a big part of it. But another big part of it is figuring out, okay, when I'm doing the silent cartographer mission, it's about knowing how the hunters will move, so I can get behind them and shoot them. It's about understanding. Oh, if I kill a grunt and I pick up their plasma pistol, a charged plasma shot will give me this sort of benefit on the battlefield, opposed to the plasma carbine, or understanding when I should use the magnum, when I should use grenades, whatever. That's still about rules. That's still about learning rule set. And I think ultimately, like all of our conversations that are like more philosophical, this come down to is it's about what kind of framework you enjoy.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that personally there's a difference between learning the rules of a puzzle game or learning the rules of an FPS.
I agree about the rules part, but it is very different experientially to play in a set of rules that requires you to improve your technical skill, your hand-eye coordination, your aiming, your timing, as opposed to a puzzle game that is about those rules exclusively. And of course, a game like Tetris is about timing, is about being able to move, and maybe that's why I would say Tetris is kind of different kind of puzzle game than what I'm talking about. But I agree on the rule set, and actually that's very similar to what I was just about to get into before you ripped the microphone away from me. What the fuck, man? Is that for me, video game skill is more about knowledge than anything.
Yeah.
And when I think that I am good at games, that is not in a technical area, that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to beat you in a competitive game. That doesn't mean I'm going to get a high score in anything specific. But I'm good at video games because I love video games. I've played a lot of video games, and I know a lot about video games. And so my internal drive is not about improving my technical skill, my timing, my aim, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's more about improving my knowledge base to be able to draw from, to be able to conquer various challenges in any video game that because I love thinking about my knowledge about video games. I'm dropped into a new video game, one that I've never played before, but I'm able to intuit because I have this history with the medium to be like, I'm playing a 2D platformer with some secrets. I'm going to go left at the beginning of the level when most people aren't going to do that. Because I've played enough video games to know that sometimes there's a secret left at the beginning of the level. Or one thing I love to pull up is checking behind a waterfall in any games, because usually there's a secret behind there. That is something you don't just know intuitively going into a video game. It is a knowledge base that I have built up playing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of video games and learning that they all operate in similar ways. And being able to know from playing a Souls game the way that they hide things and wrap things around, that has inspired other games and how they're designed. So I can then use that same knowledge that I've built up by playing Dark Souls to complete puzzles or discover secrets in other games. That is that's the skill base that I love. It's why this is a skill, is being able to name every fucking Pokemon within 30 minutes. I I practice that to the shit and back because for me, it's much more about knowledge. Can my synapses connect all these things that are more about building that knowledge base, knowing which Pokemon evolves into what, knowing how to craft different things in Minecraft.
Yeah.
I will devour that. I will spend hours on a fucking Minecraft wiki. I will spend hours learning the names of Pokemon, where you find them, what their evolution patterns are, because it's not about technical skill or hand-eye coordination prowess. It's about building a knowledge base, and that's a different kind of skill, and that's the kind of skill that really appeals to me when I'm approaching a game.
I mean, I think that's a really good point, and it's like not exactly what we're talking about when it relates to how design interfaces with skill, but I think what you're talking about is like a more fundamental version of the conversation, which is, do you in the first place possess the basic skills to understand how to play games? And a lot of people don't, and that's not like a judgment.
No, it
one
is.
way or
for me it is.
Oh,
certainly.
It's not a judgment one way or the other, but it's just to illustrate that there is definitely a basic grasp of video games that you and I have, that everybody who engages in games
in this kind of video,
at this level takes for granted.
Yes, absolutely.
You take for granted even your ability to move a camera around.
Absolutely.
It's very, very, very hard for people who
knowing
don't...
where the triangle button is.
It's very...
knowing what L3 means.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That doesn't make sense. You have to know what that fucking means.
That's a really good point, because that's an unlabeled button.
Yeah.
That's an unlabeled button, and it's why I really like a lot of what Nintendo did with the Switch.
Sure.
And why I would love them to just drop A, B, X, Y entirely off of their controllers, because when you're playing in single Joy-Con mode, to indicate what button to hit, they simply gray in one of the circles, as opposed to saying hit A, because obviously if you have a Joy-Con on the side, A is not in the same position.
Or you don't have A.
Yeah. I think that Nintendo, better than a lot of developers, recognizes that there is an intrinsic joy to their characters and worlds, that you're going to be captivating people who are maybe really young or maybe don't play games. And that you have to do things like teach them, as you're saying, literally what the buttons are, because most people don't have that skill set. And that's not, going back to Super Mario Odyssey also, you, me, and the person watching this video might play that game and be like, well, why in the fuck would I want to play where I have 8 heart pieces, and if I fall off the stage, I'm going to bubble, and there's literally like a line on the ground for me to walk along towards the moon? It's because Nintendo recognizes that there's a lot of people who need that to enjoy the game, and that's why I, even though it gets criticized a lot in hardcore Nintendo circles, really like this sort of post-New Super Mario Brothers Wii philosophy that Nintendo takes of accessibility and assist options. Because in most cases, in a game like Odyssey, they're not making the game worse for us. They're putting that skill floor even lower. And I think, unless you're like From Software and you want your game to be played by a particular demographic of people, which I think is totally fine, I think the skill floor of every game should be as low as it possibly
I absolutely agree. And where I come down on From Software, I think it's an important element of games culture to talk about, is I love their games. Elden Ring, Dark Souls 1, and Bloodborne those are the only 3 games I've actually played. But they're 3 of my favorite games.
It's hundreds of hours.
Of course. No, absolutely. I'm not saying I'm not a FromSoft fan, but I'm just saying I can't comment on Sekiro. I can't comment on Dark Souls 3 or Demon Souls. I don't like those games. I don't like the combat of those games. And you're like, the fuck? That's the whole goddamn point. It's about beating those bosses. Like, nay, dear viewer. Because for me, it is much more about the knowledge that I was talking about earlier that makes those games so appealing to me. And so one thing that I found so appealing about Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring is that they do offer, in horseshit ways, admittedly horseshit ways, ways to tailor the experience to myself, where it's, I went and fucking grinded for Blood Echoes for an hour or whatever, and then I was over leveled, so I was doing a lot more damage than I was supposed to on the bosses. Or I found a glitch in Dark Souls 1 that let me just duplicate the amount of like little soul bits that I had, so I can just consume them and get a ton of levels. In Elden Ring, you can just leave and go elsewhere and try something else that's easier. I didn't play those games for the combat design, for the learning the boss patterns, having my character die over and over and over again, which is structurally, narratively, intentionally the design of those games, and is what most people find appealing about them. But I found that once I was able to remove my barrier from my disconnection with the combat, which is my least favorite part of those games, I was able to appreciate the depth of knowledge and breadth of the games that I think is not talked about as much. The fact that the worlds are interconnected in really interesting ways, and so you get this better understanding of the map, and they all of their games are built in ways where there's like physically a world around you, and the distance between different locations like flow between each other in specific ways, and that like being able to remember the map of Dark Souls where there's like fucking 40 areas and they're all next to each other in different ways, and an elevator goes down here and you pop out there. That it was so intoxicating to me, and especially once I discovered the lore of these games where every area is there for a specific reason and every boss is there for a specific reason, and if you beat this guy and you bring the fucking thing that he dropped over to this part and you put it on the fucking pedestal, it unlocks this thing. That was like, this is so intricately designed, but it's about that world. It's about building up my knowledge of the lore, of the map, of the ways that the different items combine together, and specifically not what is traditionally understood in those games to be the gameplay, which is high skill floor, fuck you, get good, beat this boss. I found ways in those games in specific, again, I haven't played Sekiro, I can't necessarily apply that to that, to make my own skill floor, to where I was able to get on that floor and fucking boogie.
I mean, this is kind of what I was improperly trying to explain when I was trying to mention The Last of Us. Is that the reason I don't think gameplay versus story is a good dichotomy is because often gameplay and story are very much hand in hand. It's skill and story which aren't hand in hand.
I agree.
You can play The Last of Us on whatever the easiest, I don't know what it's called in that game. Whatever the easiest difficulty in Last of Us is. And the gameplay is still intrinsically linked to the story. When you have to kill the surgeons and save Ellie, that's like the gameplay and the story couldn't be any closer together. But you can choose where you want to lie along that skill axis. In some ways, Dark Souls in these games let you do that. In some ways, they don't. What I think you're raising importantly is that you can enjoy certain dimensions of games and shy away from others without invalidating your own experience.
Absolutely.
And some devs really openly welcome this. An interesting example for me that I always like to think about is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but also Insomniac's games, which stole this idea, I think, from Eidos, which is basically the idea of individual toggles for different parts of the game to where you can skip puzzles entirely. If you want, you can put combat.
I also remember that specifically in Celeste, which is a very good version of that.
Put combat difficulty up, put traversal difficulty up, drop puzzles to 0. That's typically how I played those games personally. And I think that that's fine. And again, it speaks to gameplay and story are married. Skill isn't. Skill is like a freestanding idea.
Skill is the ex lover, no longer in the relationship.
And I think
that's what I'm talking about.
I think what you're raising about From is really important. And to get like meta textual for a second,
what's new?
I think that From Software and Souls games, and I'm speaking a little bit out of turn, so all our friends who like these games more that are watching this video can let me know if I'm right about this, but a lot of the appeal of Demon's Souls in 2009 was that it was hardcore, right? It was not like the game design of the time. And I think that the From's games have been to some extent co-opted by a contingent of people that champion them just because they can be hard. When they don't have to be hard. And I just think that we have a somewhat unfortunate situation in the discourse around if FromSoft should make an easy mode in their games or not. Because you have people with, I don't think, the right intentions talking about the game. The game should be hard, so it keeps people out and it's a hardcore experience. What you're explaining is that there's more dimensions to why these games are interesting. But at the same time, and I've just been called a massive woke leftist online, so now I'm going to be a big right-wing gatekeeper for a second. I don't think
there are good people on both sides. He's on both sides. He's a good person.
I don't think that anybody should tell From to make the game have an easy mode, and I think that is massively, massively disingenuous to couch that argument within accessibility. I think that that's completely unfair. There's a lot of movies that...
Which, of course, this is a classic right-wing talking point. I believe it's on the ballot this year.
No, what I'm saying is because it's a lot of these sort of weird gamer types.
Oh, I'm fully aware of this. I get sucked into Souls rabbit holes on Twitter constantly.
What I'm trying to say is
it's not fun. I don't like it. It just happens.
There's a lot
I'm proud of it.
There's a lot of movies I can't watch because I get skill checked by them. I can't watch this fucking Jean Diedelman movie because I'll turn it off within 15 minutes. Yeah. Not every movie is for me. Yeah. I don't think every game is for every person.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think that it's just a whole fucking mess of discourse.
That's a very different thing to really talk about.
Yeah. But
let's read what our friend Franz says, whose name is still Babylon's Fall Finisher.
Yeah.
He says, playing video games in itself requires some level of skill and practice in order to actually figure out what is going on and how to use the tools the game gives you to your advantage, whatever that goal may be. Like to beat Pokemon when I was 5, I had to attempt to read everything and then figure out where to go and which Pokemon/moves would serve best for each scenario. After accruing all the skill, oh boy, oh my, it's satisfying to finally finish whatever game or challenge you aim to overcome. These skills can then pass to other games, i.e. if it's a platformer, then you might be pretty good at it from the get-go. I also think video games can inversely repurpose those skills you learned into the real world, whether in problem-solving reflexes or maybe a game taught you how to do taxes, bro. I don't know. By the way, I didn't beat Pokemon when I was 5, but I tried.
I think it's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Because the skills that Franz is talking to in Pokemon, again, is not the skills I was referring to earlier, that Henry was referring to. And it's a sort of skill base I don't have. And this is another interesting one. And it's actually something we largely share in common, which is a disinterest in JRPGs. Now, I think we are disinterested for different reasons.
Yes.
I think one of the core reasons I have a hard time with JRPGs is because they're too fucking complicated for me.
Yeah, sure.
I linger with games like what Henry is saying because they're simple, and I find a lot of excitement out of mastering something simple.
Sure.
I try playing fucking Final Fantasy, and I'm like, well, goddamn, there's certainly a lot of stats I need to look after here. Even if I play Cyberpunk, I like Cyberpunk more before they overhauled the skill system, and it was basically just a shooter. So I think that, again, he's raising this point of skill means a lot of different things.
Yes. No, definitely. I mean, I think this is pretty much exactly what I was getting at earlier, with more of a knowledge base in terms of skill that can be applied to different games. Yes.
Yeah, he also said, though, which I find interesting, is this idea of playing video games in and of itself requires some level of skill and practice to actually figure out what's going on. Now, I think what he's saying can kind of mean two things. One, it can mean what we've already been discussing, which is this idea of having a basic knowledge of like
digital interactivity.
Yeah. But what I think it can also mean, and I'm interested for your thoughts on this, is the idea of starting a game and not understanding its tools and having to spend a couple hours being bad at it to unlock like a sense of knowledge.
Sure.
Does that turn you off of playing a game?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I think it can.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the reason. Whoa! Look at the God ray.
There was one God ray on me, so I thought I'd close it, made it worse for a second. But there we go.
That kind of, you need to literally understand the game to get anywhere, is the reason why I played Bloodborne for the first time, couldn't get out of the first area, and then put it down.
Yeah.
I think that game in specific, the way that I was able to get past that, incentivize myself to get past that, is once I learned that there was a rich lore and story that I would be rewarded for getting past and exploring a little bit more. That incentivizes me to push myself to learn the game's mechanics and techniques in order to get to what I cared about in the game. But I think that if I were to say just in general, I prefer a game that has a balance in terms of some things I need to learn, but most things I'm able to use my previous knowledge of other games to inform. And teach me one new mechanic, teach me one new element of story, whatever we want to say. But have that sort of be the cherry on top. But it's also that's not a end all be all.
Sure.
Because in something like Tears of the Kingdom that has a bunch of mechanics that I'd never experimented with in games before. That's actually similar to what I said earlier, because I already had the Breath of the Wild knowledge and the 3D open world game knowledge to bring into that. But sometimes I really do love not knowing anything about a game and having to learn like each element about it. It obviously becomes increasingly rarer and rarer as I go, but I think one actually very good example was Overwatch. When I played Overwatch, I had played a few multiplayer FPS games before. I played a little Counter-Strike. I played 30 minutes of TF2. I don't know. But Overwatch, for someone who doesn't know what's going on, is an insane video game. Yeah. There are 50 fucking characters. There's all these maps. You got 10 different objectives. Everything combos in different ways. Everyone has like 20 abilities each. It's a lot. But when I remember getting into Overwatch the first time, of course, the game was a lot smaller back when it launched, but learning that you could sit on the payload and put Reinhardt here and Bastion here, and that was a technique for a long time, or the way that you could use Maze Freeze and then right-click to like do a headshot. These things were freeze and then right-click to like do a headshot. These I hadn't used before in games. The map, and I don't know necessarily what it was about that game in specific. Maybe it was because I was playing with my friends. Maybe because I had watched all the shorts, so I knew who Genji was, and it was cool that he was able to climb up walls or whatever. But that game was totally new to me. But I persevered. I continued learning. Like, I know I can do this. And next time I can bring it into that match. That's one of the few examples, but it does happen occasionally, and rare and rare as I go on and play more games. But it's not an end all be all. But I guess I stay away from games I'm totally unfamiliar with because I'm a little bitch, and because when I watch Joe play Madden, I'm like, I don't even know how that works. Yeah. I don't even know how you knew how to make that decision. Not only because I don't understand football, right, which is probably a big part of that, but I mean, it's similar. It's like that would be the knowledge base I would bring into that allowed you to get a handle on those mechanics, but I don't have the knowledge base or the technical knowledge. Right. And so when I look at Madden, I'm like, I don't fucking know. I have no interest in playing that because I have no idea how I'm supposed to play that game.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, something like Madden, I think, is almost completely irrelevant to the conversation, just in that.
Relevant or irrelevant?
Irrelevant.
Okay, you missed the ear.
So, sorry, just in that, like, I mean, what are they going to do? Teach you how to play football? Like, I think that sports sims exist in a totally different lane of, like,
fair enough. Yeah.
They expect that when you go to play Madden or NBA or FIFA or whatever, now fucking Topspin again, that you know how to play the sport. Mm-hmm. I think a game like Overwatch is a really good example of something that nicely has a lot of depth to it, but the depth isn't immediately apparent. Mm-hmm. And you can still feel good when you're just starting.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's a really, really critical thing. Mm-hmm. Unless you're trying to be like an Elden Ring again, wherein you step right outside of Elden Ring, and if you fight that first enemy, he literally just kicks you with his horse and you die immediately. I think that can work, but for me, I think that the best opening to a game is not only do you have to balance cinematic and getting you into the action and everything, but I think you need to make it apparent to the player that there's a lot to learn.
Sure.
But it's okay to not know it yet. Mm-hmm. And I think Overwatch is approachable in that way.
Yeah.
But let's go to a comment from our friend Adam here, who says, there needs to be engagement in some way. Big story games don't need the player to be particularly skillful, because then you're locking the player out of the best bit of the game. Same goes for atmospheric games, quote-unquote walking sims, point-and-click adventure games. These games' best bits are the world, the writing. You want as many people to experience that as possible. The other stuff, there's a fine balance. If you make your game require too much skill, you end up in a niche and it's a hard place to be in. On the other hand, games that are hard but reward the player for the determination and improvement rather than their inherent skill feel so much more cathartic because you have to overcome obstacles to get there. Mm-hmm. I think a game needs a balance personally. If a game is too easy, I can still enjoy it and have fun, but the gameplay itself isn't going to be half as engaging as something that provides challenge. If a game is too hard, though, I basically lose interest. I've yet to play a Souls game for more than a few hours because I get bored of smashing my face against brick walls or being forced to play a certain way to progress with very little motivating me. Mm-hmm. Balance is key. How you design that balance is a true skill.
There's a little bow on top there. The true skill all along was the game designers that made the game.
I do think this is true, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's 100% true. What do you think about what Adam's saying here?
I think that the best thing that Adam said to me was that skill needs to match intent of the game. Yeah. Is I see Ikaruga.
Yeah.
And I know what kind of skill that game's going to need.
Yeah.
And I see Firewatch, and I know what kind of skill that's going to need.
And it's obvious in both cases.
Yeah, and very obvious in both cases. But I think that Adam makes a very good point, and I think where sometimes it's hard for me to reconcile my disinterest in a game's genre or style versus my personal interest is because I have a drive to experience every game and want to be able to understand it on its own level and like be able to appreciate it. But that's not possible, and I need to admit that to myself. More often than not. But is that Ikaruga's skill intent of learning enemy patterns and getting better at the twitch reflexes? That is the best part of that game.
Yeah.
That is why people love that game. That's why it's a classic game. But Firewatch, the best part of that game is the art direction, is the story, is the vibes, is the music, and if for whatever fucking reason Firewatch had really hard combat, it would preclude people from experiencing the entire narrative arc, from being able to sort of zone out and appreciate the music and the art direction and all that. There obviously there's different balances on each of those, but I think the ones where it becomes most frustrating to me, and I think I can apply this to something like the Souls games, is I would like those games a lot more if there was an easy mode, because I do think that there's a lot more to appreciate in those games. And what I appreciate about those games is kind of what I appreciate about Firewatch. Is the story, is the world design, is the art direction, but I have to like find a way around the skill to like be able to get in there. And then there are some games where I want to really enjoy the art direction and the world design. And sometimes that's a 2D platformer. But if it's too difficult and I can't progress to the next area, and I feel that the enemy placement or whatever it is unfair, then I'm not unable to appreciate the element that I want out of the game.
Sure.
Which is more world design, which is more exploration than elements of game design that I flock to.
I mean, I think that Adam raises a really good point here, and Souls is an interesting counterpoint to this, which is that most games either put skill or story and gameplay first.
I agree with that, yeah.
And again, this is why I want to why I've been trying to make this distinction over and over again about skill, not gameplay. Because Firewatch is a entirely gameplay driven game. You're walking the whole time. Abzu is rarely interrupted by a cutscene. That's Journey, Abzu. These are gameplay games.
That's a good point.
But obviously it's all about the storytelling, right? I don't think you need to have skill and gameplay. Or sorry, that was wrong. Skill and story in like equal measure to be a good game.
I agree with that.
I actually don't think that most games do. I think there's a rare crop of games that have both an emphasis on skill and on story. And Dark Souls from Software is a good example of that.
Sure.
They are games of such a high caliber of design talent, art direction talent, writing talent that they have both. The games have a budget and a scale that can accomplish that. But a lot of games simply can't do that. And even a lot of big games, something like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, obviously is all about the skill. And that's fine. And I think it's totally fine to prioritize when you're designing something, one or the other, and then backfill to a lesser extent. What you're not prioritizing.
And that's definitely obvious in the games that take one or the other. And I think it's interesting what you said about a game like a walking simulator being an entirely gameplay focused game. Is because I think that is an interesting point, but I almost don't know if it's a distinction worth making. Because at that point there are no story only games.
No, what I'm trying to say more is like when people, it's not. I just don't think it's right to say that is, because we're working in a different framework. We're working with skill or story and gameplay. I just don't think it's right to say that those games don't have gameplay.
No, of course, I totally agree with that.
And that is something people say.
And actually, that's something that has become more clear in my mind as I've talked to more people about games, of where I feel it's most important to make sure people understand the breadth of the video game medium. Interactivity is gameplay. It's not a game that challenges you is gameplay. A game with levels is gameplay. Does the game have interactivity? That's fucking gameplay. What the fuck else would it be?
This is actually why I used to be really adverse to this idea, but it's something that I actually am coming around to a lot. This idea that gameplay is not a useful term for describing games. Because people will be like, oh, why, gameplay is the equivalent of like movie watch, which is obviously not a term people use. And I think that
I haven't heard that before.
A lot of like critics will say that, or like editors will say that to you. And
so not people I interact with, thank God.
You're the right winger now. I think that the more I reflect on this idea, it's actually a really good point, because you're entirely right. Gameplay is simply the idea of playing the game. and that's interacting with the game, as you're saying. But gameplay in Abzu and gameplay in Street Fighter 6 are not the same.
Yeah.
So we need a better word than that. And I do think parsing out skill, traversal, or whatever elements of gameplay, as this sort of nebulous term you want, to explain the differences is probably more useful.
Sure. Yeah, totally. I totally would agree with that.
You want to read the last comment here?
The last comment, oh boy, comes from Ricoli. It reminds me of Ricolo. That's like a fucking cough drop, I think.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Ricoli says, I play and love a lot of games where skill is the main focus, but I'm not sure if I'd say I prioritize that necessarily. I think it's important for games to accommodate multiple skill levels for different players in some way, or have some options for it, and especially to have difficulty options, because there are people who don't find trying to beat a hard game fun if it's not well balanced with how it challenges your skills. If you're too strict with the challenge, then it can frustrate your players to the point where they're taken out of the experience or lose interest. That's why I prefer a more balanced or generally easier level of skill with difficulty, or a more gradual curve with skill or difficulty scaling.
Yeah.
I think that last bit is a very, very important point, is because I can get pretty good at a game. I can be clearing a boss in a really cool way in Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, which is a game that I feel like I got pretty good at. But it's because, for me, it's very important to have consistent onboarding. I like games that give me the opportunity to approach each mechanic and each element of the skill one at a time before combining them together. And having that ramp up gives me a lot of confidence. And which is why a game like Ikaruga that doesn't have any ramp up, the first area is very difficult. And I think you can also apply to something like Sekiro, or to a game we were playing very recently. And this is not the exact same comparison, but Penny's Big Breakaway is a new 3D platformer that has a much higher technical skill floor than almost any 3D platformer I've ever played. These games, again, not Sekiro because I actually haven't played it, but I can make the assumption about Sekiro.
Sure.
These games disinterest me because the expectation is that you will spend the time in the first difficult area trying very hard to overcome that skill floor in order to progress to the rest of the game. Now, two very different examples. Getting very good at Ikaruga and being able to get through Penny's Big Breakaway is a pretty big spectrum, but I do think the idea of having a high technical skill floor is something that I shy away from, and occasionally can frustrate me, because in a game like Ikaruga, if the first, let's just say, 2 or 3 areas were a lot easier and there was a lot less enemies, or maybe there was, there might be a training mode in Ikaruga, I guess I don't really fucking know. I don't really want to play Ikaruga, but in very difficult games that are difficult from the start, if there was areas that allowed you to approach it a little bit more slowly and get eased into the game's mechanics, as opposed to requiring that technical skill up front, I would probably beat them. I would probably enjoy them a lot more, because confidence is key when it comes to me and being good at a game. If I do not have the confidence that I'm going to be able to do this because I'm dying a lot, or having to see the same area over and over again, or feel that enemy placement, whatever it is unfair, then I'm not going to feel confident enough or engaged enough to get to that next area of the game, even when I might enjoy it. But first impressions is very key, and so onboarding, having a slower start, teaching you the mechanics in the game, which most games do, but it's very, very important game.
Yeah, most games, or put it this way, a lot of modern games will start with the difficulty down here, and then they'll arc it up. But then there's another school of thought which will probably start the difficulty maybe around here. Like if this is the bottom, this is the top. You're around here, and then when you chafe against this obstacle enough, the difficulty will essentially decrease as you learn the game, and then usually the challenge will climb back up with you. I think that they're
like a sine wave. Ooh.
Essentially, to an extent. I think that they're both interesting approaches to design. I tend to agree with you that I'd prefer to start somewhere a little bit easier and ratchet up. Because I think your point about confidence is interesting.
Definitely.
For me, it's not about confidence so much as it's about not discouraging me. I don't need to start a game.
Fair enough.
And I think, it's not really semantics. I think it's something of a significant difference, because I don't need to feel confident when I start playing a game. I'd like to feel empowered in some way. But I don't need to feel like I'm good at it. what I don't want to feel is like I'm immediately getting my teeth kicked in and I'm done. There's no pull for me to go forward.
Sure.
And this is kind of the problem with multiplayer games sometimes, where
I agree with that. Yeah.
You go online and you get the tar beat out of you, and you're like, well, I can't.
What am I gonna do?
What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And that can be quite discouraging, and that's why I think discouragement and empowerment are maybe more important than just confidence.
Sure, fair enough. Yeah.
But I think this is also sometimes why a game like Spider-Man 2, game designed for the lowest common denominator, which I don't mean in a negative way.
Yeah, of course.
But designed to get the most people in the door, starts with that big Sandman fight because you feel like a fucking badass then.
Yeah.
And if you had to choose between your player feeling like a little guy or a big fucking badass, most people are going to be interested in starting up there. So I do want to read one final comment though. And this comes from Andrew, our friend Andrew, who replied to the first version.
What's his full name?
Andrew Rezko of My Star Wars fame.
There you go. We got to make sure that people know.
Sure. Who said this? Which I think
it's a plug for the other channel, by the way.
Yeah.
You all fucking know this.
I think this is actually a good way to cap off the conversation in large part. Andrew says, the framing of the question is kind of weird, which is also why I rewrote the prompt.
He's replying to an old prompt that was worded poorly.
Yes. But what he says is, but it actually applies to this conversation too. The framing of this question is kind of weird because you can play a game badly, for example, walking into walls and not knowing how to shoot in GoldenEye is playing, but not skillfully.
Yeah.
That said, I think you can learn skills that transfer to other things. Like when I was younger, I learned a lot about communication and teamwork playing Call of Duty that transferred to me playing Airsoft with my friends. Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow improved my reading and vocabulary. Cerulean, Ether, Fissure, Recoil, etc. When I was in 3rd grade. Plotting Just Dance Revolution at home with a dance pad improved my endurance and coordination, etc. So playing a game isn't just a skill. Playing a game skillfully can improve certain skills independent of gaming, I think.
No, I think he's definitely right. And I think that this is much more important, obviously, when you're young and you don't have much knowledge to work with. And so for me, I can draw a very specific example, which is Minecraft taught me a lot about science, about geology. Right. I knew a lot about geology and biomes and geography and like terms that I'd internalized through playing Minecraft and knowing what a taiga biome was and knowing what different kinds of ore were.
Yeah.
Things that I would not have known and had to have learned from the fucking lecture in 5th grade science class or whatever. Well, actually, I guess I wasn't playing. Whatever. You get the idea.
It was around that time.
When I was young, I knew these things when they were taught to me in class because I'd been playing a game that incentivized me to learn about them, to master all the different ideas, and frankly, to be cool in front of my friends so I can say, oh, we're in a taiga biome now. They're like, what does that mean? I'm like, ha ha ha. But then it actively made certain elements of geography, geology, physics, these different things easier to me because I'd been taught by a video game what these things were in a more understandable context rather than just reading them off a sheet or looking at a picture. I knew what the different biomes were and what different kinds of hills or whatever it was.
I really think that one of the great things about us becoming older and becoming the generation that has kids is that there won't be a stigma around young children playing video games. Like even I think there was to an extent when we were little.
Definitely.
Because I really do believe, as you're saying, as Andrew is saying, that there is a great set of soft skills to learn from games.
Yeah.
My mom is a middle school teacher, and she texted me the other day. One of her students was hanging around after school, like waiting to be picked up or what. I don't forget what he was there, and he had his Switch and he was playing Super Mario Wonder, and he was talking to my mom about why he liked the game. He likes the colorful imaginative characters. He likes seeing the Koopas on roller skates. And he really likes looking through the levels for secrets. And even something like that is, I think, inherently a great thing to teach kids.
Sure.
As attention spans get shorter, as people are not doing very well in school because of all these extraneous factors, societal factors. I think just the ability of a kid to play Super Mario Brothers Wonder and sit with it and want to look around and find secrets and start to piece together, okay.
Give these kids Myst.
So they're basically like, oh, okay, if I do these certain actions, I'll probably find, I'll find a wonder seed over here, a purple corn or whatever. And that sort of pattern building is really important.
Yeah.
And Andrew, of course, he have a lot of more concrete examples than that.
Yeah.
But I do like this idea of and Franz touched on it earlier too, this idea of the skills going in the reverse direction.
Sure.
I don't know if that's a good example for that in my life, just because I I mean, there's little knowledge I don't already have, and haven't had since I was a kid. I was born with all the knowledge one could need, and it's sort of been a burden across my life.
You're kind of like Princess Alia. It's a Dune reference. That's the baby inside of Lady Jessica. She's been given all the knowledge of the Reverend Mothers.
The thing about
Did you not know that?
Well, they don't say her name in the movie.
Oh, well, I just...
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I've seen it on Twitter or whatever, but they never say her name in the movie.
Sure. She's not really a character.
No.
She's a concept. She's a fucking embryo.
Well, you see her for a couple minutes.
Not sure.
But that's not a helpful point.
That's enough Dune.
Video on. But
You know what, guys? We're Dune here. Dank?
Yeah.
Dank is a 60 years ago term?
Maybe more like 150 years ago.
Holy shit. Wow. Then I have a really clear memory of that time period. What? Late 1800s? Late 19th century? It's one century off.
Yes.
Yeah. We're in the 21st century right now.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Can't wait for the 22nd. It's gonna be gasted.
We might see it. We might not.
I've been thinking about that. I was actually thinking about this the other day because we were talking about my mom dying in like a joking fashion. Okay. I was like, "You're not going to be alive at this point in time."
Oh, I see. You're talking with her.
Yes, she was there. Okay. And we were talking about the fact that the average lifespan continues to increase, and I'm like, I don't think that any of us are going to see 100. I mean, 100% honest. I don't think any of us are going to see 100. I don't know why. So? I just get that vibe.
Is this like based on family tree?
No, my great grandma was like 103 when she fucking died.
It's just a vibe check.
Yeah. But I mean, she's the only person I know that's lived to over 100.
Yeah.
And like that's a really small sample size. One out of I know at least 7 people.
Yeah.
That's not even.
I mean, I think
15%.
It's I think it's the way you treat your body. I think it's a coin flip if you even get up in the morning.
Well, but I always make sure I'm clear of toxins before we record.
That's fair, because they just build up in you constantly. You weren't peeing; you're doing a secret third thing.